Hello, Simone. I am excited to be here with you today. And I mean, I'm actually excited because there is world-changing news, like way bigger news than the Maduro situation, way bigger news than anything that's happened maybe in like the last half decade.
But you
And
probably haven't heard about it.
not that many people are covering it, and I don't understand why. So
Because we're so obsessed with this little city in the United States called Minneapolis.
for clarification, there was essentially a military coup just happened in China.
In China, like China.
China, like the second major political power.
Indianapolis or China.
The heads of the military, and so far of the CMC, the committee that makes up the military, and I'll put a picture on screen here, every single member of it now. This is the entire top of the Chinese government.
Oh, we've gone to all of them?
Every member but Xi and the secret police head, like the guy who's in charge.
Okay, no, that's what I saw. Yeah, there was one left.
Is arrested or killed at this point. And the last one of these guys who hadn't been had a group of military members go and try to abduct G from where he lives, which is a hotel. And there was a firefight and a bunch of people died and they locked down parts of Beijing. Imagine.
I bet they just didn't have the LRADs. If only they had our LRADs.
In Washington, the head of our military attempted to abduct Trump. And the next day, what we were talking about was some dumb piece of nonsense who got shot by law enforcement because he physically attacked them while carrying a gun, right? Like, that's...
An officer approaches your car. Be polite.
Is there a problem, officer?
And stay in your car with your hands on the wheel.
What the fuck do you want, motherfucker?
Unless you want your ass kicked.
Right? You know, that video, people watching, they're like, well, they had already gotten the gun out of his hands before. He had it when he attacked them, right? Like, well, what do you mean? I understand, yes, you shouldn't shoot him after you get the gun out of his hand, but that's a heightened situation. Okay? These are still human beings, right? If you're in a conflict with somebody and note they have a gun, even if you successfully think you might have just knocked it out of their hands or didn't see that somebody just knocked it out of their hands, you're taking fire. I'm sorry.
I mean, the way I look at it is it's obviously illegal to hit someone who's crossing the street, like in a crosswalk. Well, and at any point, right?
Yeah.
But before you cross the street, you should probably look both ways. You know, like don't just walk blindly into the street. And I think, you know, obviously, one, attacking someone in some kind of, you know, federal position, they're not law enforcement.
They are law enforcement officers.
Okay, attacking a law enforcement officer and doing so while armed, like those are sort of two things that you shouldn't have done.
An ice shooting. We got another ice shooting
here. See, nobody cares.
So yeah, it's one of those, like, this shouldn't have happened, but on the larger scheme of things, though, we are talking about one conflict here versus China, the future of the country, the end of a regime, possibly, and this is really big.
This is a complete transformation of how the government in China functions and is structured. It's going to completely change the types of actions that they are likely to carry out in the future. It completely aligns with all of my China predictions.
Well, I've spent probably 3 hours watching coverage of this, and I still can't really make heads or tails. There's a tunnel, there's an explosion, people are disappearing, families have been arrested, not individuals. So please break it down for people, even who have been aware of this, because I think it's actually quite confusing, and I'm having trouble keeping track of it.
Then we'll go into more detail.
Okay, yeah.
So the head of the PLA, and then I think the head of the Air Force, so the two final like heads of the all of Chinese armed forces.
Okay.
All right. They have been in a sort of conflict with Xi Jinping for a while at this point. They both really, well, wanted to kill each other, basically. Now, the heads of the army, I do not feel like they started it, right? They were maybe against him over consolidating power. But obviously they're worried about this, and they're backed by the Princeling faction. These are the people who are the descendants of the people who worked in Mao's government and various very wealthy people in China,
Mao,
right?
because I heard that some are also they were loyalist to Hu Jintao, but not Xi Jinping, and so
Well, so
they
the PLA guy, like he was a very senior official because he both had military honors in China
okay.
because he served in actual combat, which was a long time ago. So not a lot of people have combat medals. And he was the descendant, the son of the head of Mao's personal bodyguard force. So
Oh wow, so this is going way back to OG leaders, not just
basically
the
he has
previous
all
administration.
the cred, connections, everything like that you could need if you were going to try an overthrow, right?
Okay.
So anyway, Xi tries to have this guy killed, right? So he has
So
his
she was
secretary killed.
the aggressor in this case. He
It
started
appears
it
so,
then.
yeah. So he has this guy's secretary killed, or one of the high-level general guys killed. We'll get to it in a second. Died mysteriously. Then this guy has an assassination attempt on him, and it looks like the United States may have helped him avoid that assassination attempt. This is when he was on a trip. And so obviously, he's like, I just have to do it now or not. Then there's this
Right.
giant explosion in a tunnel.
Okay.
It blew up a car. And what we know about this car, this was last month. And if you're like, I didn't know any of this stuff, like, this is because the slop storm that you are in is keeping you from the important information about how the world is functioning right now. A car that had Xi Jinping's body double blew up in that tunnel, and the explosion was really underreported on in Chinese media. So we know that there was something like weird going on with it, and they were trying to cover it up. So then the two remaining guys, because he's been doing sweeps of all of these other guys recently. Like, the reason you got all these X's on this picture is because he's been getting rid of everyone. So where are we here? Okay, so they're like, oh my God, I'm gonna be killed, I'm gonna be killed, I'm gonna be killed. So what do I do next? Let's get together and organize a capture of Xi Jinping. So they try to corner him in, because he moves between residences, and one of the places he stays is a hotel that's just for like CCP officials.
Oh.
So they do this raid on the hotel with their military forces to attempt to arrest him. And they had already started to put out the PR about this, like how they were going to frame it, which is like, we're doing this to save China, to save the CCP. Like, she is no longer, and a lot of people could feel that way. I mean, he was definitely going in a direction that a lot of people didn't like.
Sure.
It was the future of the country in this consolidation. And this matter, if you wipe out, because I'd had a debate with somebody, and I've said for a long time, China is screwed. China does not have a future. And this is where I most frequently get into debates with like the hardest core alignment people we have. This has always been my biggest debate with.
We've got a lot of China stands. Yeah.
Yeah, like a lot of people really just.
Well, not even like there's a world in which I very much care about China and its people. It's not that I don't care about China or don't like China, and they do. They just somehow believe that China is miraculously shielded from the effects of demographic collapse and not undermined in terms of its sovereignty, in terms of energy and food independence. Like, I don't know.
The problem with China is, even if China didn't have its current demographics, it would still be effed. Like, their water situation is terrible. Their geographic security situation is terrible.
Their food security, yeah. The amount of food and energy that they import is quite high, including, I think, some like minerals for fertilizer.
When you guys, okay, I'll quickly explain why they're so screwed. You can watch our video on the future of East Asia where we go into this, but essentially, if China gets in a conflict and the Strait of Malacca is blockaded, China will not be able to get, and keep in mind, to get its oil, China imports something like 83% of its oil, and 86% of that 83% is coming from the Middle East. So that means that oil is coming on tankers through the Suez Canal, going past India, who hates China's guts. And then if you blockade Malacca, it has to go around Australia, who would also be anti-China in one of these situations, and then try to get through. I mean, this is even assuming that they have Taiwan at this point, right? Which unlikely that they'll capture that, and we'll get to that in a second. It's just comical. They're not going to be able to get their oil, and they don't even produce enough food themselves. Not even close. They're not like the United States. The United States produces tons of food, tons of oil. We're fine.
We're
You
not
could blockade,
exporting our food,
even if you could blockade us, which you can't. And then you've got the problem of, okay, so you've got all of that, but even though they're importing all this food, they would be making even less of their own food because they also import their fertilizer.
Yeah.
China is just a comically cucked country if a war does break out. They would be it would be suicide. It would be more suicidal than what Russia is doing right now. And you could point this out to people. You'd feel like this would be horrifying for them. And it's not just that. So like, suppose they avoid war, which seems less likely now. We'll get to why in a second. And they just ride this out. Well, their demographics are terrible. A lot of their AIs are basically faked. Well, what was the last interesting thing from China is DeepSeek. And I hate the DeepSeek AI model for anyone who's actually used it. It's not a good model. Like Mistral from France is more interesting to me than DeepSeek. I actually am a big Mistral stan.
That's saying a lot because Malcolm cannot stand France.
Yeah, after Grok, I think it is, for me, the most useful AI model because it's both almost as smart as the mainstream models, but also extremely not safe for work tolerant. So it really doesn't break on anything during stories. I know this from my work with Reality Fabricator and putting together all that. So rfab.ai if you want to check out chatbots. But anyway, so even if all of those things weren't the case, its entire economy is a house of cards built on a real estate bubble, which is already popped, right? Like, and that house of cards has only been righted because a lot of people are like, oh, the real estate bubble popped. Why hasn't China collapsed? And it's because the government basically optically shifted where their economy was to like the tech sector, but we haven't actually seen the growth in the tech sector that you would need to justify this off shift. So comically effed country. And I just mean it like comical levels. And their one hope when I argue with the China stands, and I always point out, because I'm like, well, they would need to change X, Y, and Z, right? And they'll say, well, they'll do that. And I'm like, then why aren't they doing that right now? And they're like, well, we'll get somebody other than Xi in power eventually, right? And I'm like, no, you won't, because Xi has gutted the government of everyone competent. And they've always said to me, and this is why you watch this channel, because hopefully I predict things well geopolitically, right? They say to me, oh, Malcolm, there's still some competent people left. He hasn't gutted everyone competent from the government. Now that's beginning in force. Because this was the final, like, he has admitted this to the public. This was published in the mainstream Chinese news that these two individuals were traitors. Now, this is never done immediately when you're taking out traitors like this. It's always slow. This is basically just a declarant of war. And they've basically just been arresting anyone with power in the country now. And you saw this earlier with, what was his name? The famous, like the Elon of China. They take out Jack Ma. And, now he's cucked and can't say anything and basically under house arrest, just to make sure that everybody in China knows, no matter who you are, no matter how much money you have, we still control you. And now no one can speak back. Even, a Jackie Chan, who's famously like a stan of China, has said some stuff recently where he seems to be implying that one of his friends, another actor who did a lot of like charity work and stuff like that, may have been taken out from the CCP simply because his charity work made them look bad. He implied that he thought that as well, right? Like, because if you admit that there's poor people in the country, well, the government says there's not poor people. So if you're doing charity work, you're arguing that the government hasn't solved poverty. They haven't solved starvation. Why are you filming this? Why are you showing this, right? So the China stands pushback has always been, there's still competent people left in the government. Somebody will still take over other than Xi. A situation like this is just putting China on the pathway to be the next Venezuela. Because what would, and it justifiably does. This is why autocracies are so bad. But I guess I'm going to get to the point of this before I get into the details of this. Autocracy always ends in this scenario. This is why Nick Fuentes' idea about how the United States should be run is objectively stupid. And it's why when people come out there and they say something like, we just need a king, we just need a monarchy, and I'm sorry to Curtis Yarvin about this, because we like Curtis Yarvin, we've had him on the show. That's stupid. because it leads to this always. When you centralize power around a single individual, that individual's best interest is served, i.e., maintaining that power, because they're going to make mistakes sometimes, right? Or things that undermine their rule, like a lot of mandate of heaven things. A lot of major cities have been flooding and stuff in China recently. You know, that gives people the opportunity to, historically, with emperors, when there's natural disasters, I mean, they need to be replaced. Well, oh my God, they may want to replace me, right? So then what do you think? You think, well, the last thing I want is anyone who's an obvious choice to replace me left in the country, right? Like if you get scared like that, right? And this is the end state of all autocratic regimes. The reasons why monarchies worked in a historic context is because the people that could replace you, even during a coup, were small. There were very explicit rules. Like, even when people were cooing against the king, you needed to have somebody who had a plausible claim to the throne for the coup to be accepted. Like, you just wouldn't do a coup if you didn't have anyone, because then what they would say is, well, then just everyone will do coups, and it could just be an endless cycle of coups, right? Which they're right about. That's like, even back in the days of the old monarchies, they understood why you couldn't have a non-traditional monarchy. If you have a monarchy, you need a royal family. And it doesn't, like in Rome, where they tried to do it by like choosing the next emperor at various times, that never worked for more than a couple generations, right? Like, and we see this from ancient Rome. It's what ultimately led to the collapse of ancient Rome, right? So if you're doing a monarchy, you actually need it to be a hereditary monarchy with strict rules about hereditary procession. But that is not going to be easy to set up within a modern context. And a hereditary monarchy basically doesn't count until it's been hereditary for like 2 to 3 generations. You need somebody with, well, Simone would have claim to the throne, right? You know, the descendant of George Washington's siblings twofold over, and he didn't have any kids himself. So, you know, if we're offering King George, got King Simone here, Queen Simone. I think a lot of people would be down with that. You seem like the more even-headed of the two of us.
Yeah, but everyone would know that you're driving all my choices. So it's a 2-for-1. All the better.
Yeah, well, Empress Amelia, Empress Simone. But the point being is everyone was like, oh, China is more ordered. Like, the government can just make decisions and force everyone to follow them, right? And you have me in the background being like, that form of government is intrinsically unstable. It's not going to last. You cannot do things that way. If you attempt to, you end up with power centralizing in fewer competent people at the higher rings of power. Also, you get more corruption because you run into the secondary problem, which is now you have a bunch of dumb people around you, okay? But you've got the second issue, right? Which is you've got to give these dumb people incrementally more money than they had before, right? Like, that's how you keep them loyal to you, because people forget to be grateful for a long, because, okay, so one of the dumb guys goes to all the other 4 or 5 dumb guys, right? Who have a ton of power now. And he says, hey, you help put me in power, and I'll get you more stuff than you have right now. Right now, why not put him in power, right? And so how do you prevent that if you're number one guy? The way you prevent that if you're number one guy is you be like, I've given you literally as much as the state can afford to give you. I have already maximized the corruption. You know, the other 3 guys are like, hey, we can take more from the people and give it to you, you know, nepotistic bureaucrats. And if that sounds plausible, then you're at risk of a coup. But if somebody comes to you and says that, and they're like, no, you really couldn't bleed these people for anything more. Like, she's already maxed the corruption of this bad boy. Then there's no reason to do the coup. And that's basically where China is right now as a state. It's already, and if you look at the debauchery that the heads of these groups, you know, they always have their mistresses, they always have their, you know, horrible scandals. Their kids basically.
Yeah, we discussed the Mistress villages in another episode. I can't remember the name of it, but it's wild. Like, there are entire districts known for hosting the apartments of the women, the kept women of CCP officials.
Well, and this is why people don't want to breed there. You know, she goes around and she says, with Putin, they were talking joyfully about how, well, you know, as medical advances today, people are going to live to 150. And everyone here knows that they don't mean normal Chinese people are going to live to 150. They mean this entrenched bureaucratic class is going to harvest the organs, which is a major problem in China right now, from citizens. And kids disappearing is a major issue in China right now under extremely mysterious circumstances, schools covering it up, kids just like quote unquote dying in their classrooms or in their dorms, and then their bodies disappear.
College students? What?
Yeah. This is like a regular thing in China. There's been a lot
What?
of
Because
really
presumably
high-profile scandals.
CCP officials want young kids' organs or young adults' organs?
Mhm. Yeah, and they can do it, and there's pretty much nothing you can do. I mean, the stories are really horrifying. Like the parents have tried to even like look at the bodies and stuff like that, and the CCP won't release them. So I decided to do some follow up on this story, and it has a fun and happy ending. When a lawyer hired by the family attempted to conduct an independent investigation into the school, official personnel smashed his phone and wiped his account data, according to reports. It was later reported that the victim's family could no longer be contacted. A parent identified as Zui Lu wrote online, "The family can't be found anymore. The videos are gone. Anything posted from Henan is either throttled or taken down directly. Accounts are disabled. We are treated like weeds. We speak out so they know that even a blade of grass has a temper. Parents in Henan are still watching." So the family disappeared. Great. So yeah, I mean they're basically debauchery maxing their society, and I think that's one of the core reasons why nobody wants to breed, because they know that through breeding they're just supporting this broken system, and the only way that you can be safe against the system, and this was shown in COVID, there was a viral video in China where officers that were trying to enforce the insane zero COVID policy were talking to each other, and somebody watched them talk to each other and recorded it, and they said, "How do we get this guy to do what we want him to?" And they go, "Oh, his son, that's his weakness. That's our leverage," right? And everyone realized that's the way the government sees your kids. As soon as you have them, as a way to manipulate you further, right? And beyond that, just a resource for the ultra wealthy. And so it leads to this debauchery maxing at the core of the elite within Chinese society. And unfortunately, it's known by the average person now, and nobody wants to, that's where they're pulling the line. But let's get into the details of this. Any thoughts before I do, Simone?
No, that's just, I mean, on that front, though, one thing I do worry about, we're already dealing with what it's like to be ruled by a gerontocracy around the world. When you look at most world governments, the people in them, the legislators and the other leaders are tremendously old. And the problem is when it comes to life extension, whether or not there's illegal, horrific organ harvesting, life extension, especially when we're talking about 80 plus years old, is just going to be a rich person thing. It's not an every person thing. Brian Johnson can do don't die because he has insane amounts of money, right? And that it just worries me that not only are only the wealthy really going to access crazy levels of life extension, but they're also going to maintain an iron grip on power and just try to accumulate more for themselves and even further ossify terrible bureaucratic systems that are tearing the rest of us apart, which really just makes me so sad.
Yeah. Okay, so the Central Military Commission, the CMC, is the highest military leadership body in China. It serves the command authority over the People's Liberation Army, PLA, which includes the Army, Navy, Air Force, Rocket Force, Strategic Support Forces, as well as the People's Armed Police and Militia.
Ooh, is there a Rocket Force like our Space Force?
Yes. In practice, the CMC is the top decision-making organ for all military strategy, operations, personnel, appointments, budgets, and policy. So this literally runs everything, right? And that's where this picture comes from, where there's only two people left. The guy who's in charge of arresting high-profile people within the organization, and Xi himself. And this other guy, we'll go into a bit about him. He came out of nowhere. He's like a new guy. He's not like some all of the legacy people in this org have been taken out.
Yikes.
Which is wild. This is a complete restructuring of the Chinese government. To continue here, in mid-January 2026, the top two operational leaders of the People's Liberation Army, Vice Chairman of the Central Military Commission Zhang Yawa, and Chief of the Joint Staff Department Lu Zhenli, attempted a coup against Xi Jinping. On January 18th, they moved forces to the Jingxi Hotel in Beijing, intended to capture or neutralize Xi during what they framed internally as a save the party and save the country. The plan leaked roughly 2 hours before execution, only 2 hours before execution. Xi was quietly evacuated, countermeasures were ordered, and a gunfight broke out. When Zhang's troops arrived, 9 of Xi's personal guards and dozens of attackers were killed. Immediately afterward, Zheng Lu and their families, secretaries, and a number of close associates were all arrested.
Wow.
And neither of them had moved their families out of the country because they thought, one, that they were going to win, and two, that would have alerted Xi, who is watching all of them incredibly closely.
Right. Yeah, it would have been a dead giveaway if their families suddenly start heading out to non-extradition countries.
But now everyone in their family is gone, right? And keep in mind that this was the head of the Princeling faction in China, like the rich person faction. So if you're a wealthy person in China right now, everything you're thinking about is, how do I get my money and myself out of the country? Every competent person in China is thinking about this right now. And if they're not that competent, or they are overconfident in their ability to play the system, because things only go downhill from here when something like this happens, right? This is terrible news for the people of China. If the coup had worked, it would have been fairly good news. Things could have gotten back on track. Some sanity to the way the government was organized could have been restored.
Yeah.
And these two were both. The other thing that's important about the purges is they removed all the heads of the military command. And a lot of them, especially one of these guys, which we'll get into in a second, was really against attacking Taiwan, because he said,
oh, see, I thought that this meant that basically their military would be on, like, oh, I guess we have to rethink everything mode, and not, okay, let's go for Taiwan. But you're saying maybe one of the few people holding China back on Taiwan is now gone, removing a major impediment to potential
Well, I mean, the
conflict.
question is why did they need to remove literally everyone who was a highly experienced person in the military? Every highly experienced individual in the military had to be removed. Why is it that everyone with actual warfare scenario had to be removed? And the answer is because those were the people saying this plan is unrealistic. And so it means that what we might be about to see is a horrifyingly stupid move on China's part, and a move that the AI safety crowd is probably salivating for, because if executed, and if Taiwan is knocked off, they make 85% of the high-end semiconductors on Earth, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to set back AI a decade.
I still would be completely shocked if Taiwan was invaded, because I mean, just so many factors. It just doesn't. China has a lot going on right now. Engaging in military conflict with Taiwan is the last thing they need at this time. I would be shocked if in the next 2 years Taiwan were invaded, and I would need to reevaluate after that. But I could even see just Taiwan, like 5+ years, Taiwan being totally fine.
Only a crazy person would attempt to invade Taiwan at this point.
Yeah.
The problem is
you're just saying she is crazy.
It's kind of a crazy person. And on top of that,
you just went on this long rant explaining, and I'm not saying crazy rant, I'm saying logical rant, explaining to people why he is acting entirely logically.
Right.
Given the position, he's been backed into a corner.
So but it's also logical for Xi to attack Taiwan. It's not logical for China to attack Taiwan. But what I mean by this is China would get their butts handed to them. Hundreds of millions of people would likely die of starvation.
Because of blockades and stuff.
Because of blockades and stuff,
oh,
yeah.
Boy.
And blackouts and not being able to move water. It would be one of the worst human rights tragedies our planet has seen since the last time China did something.
That had not even occurred to me. I don't know. It seems like I didn't hear about there being humanitarian crises in Russia due to all the blockades. So do you really think that would be the case? China has spent years and years with the Belt and Road Initiative trying to shore up its supply chains. So I don't imagine it would be a humanitarian crisis to the scale that you
No.
I mean, Russia didn't invest. Russia has not invested anywhere close to the amount that China has in shoring up its
the Belt and Road Initiative mostly turned into a scheme for Chinese officials to just get money out of the country. The reality is that there was a lot of buying toilet seats for $1 million, right? Like if you actually look at the durable alliances they have quote unquote built with this, they are not anywhere that is actually useful to China. Who did they need to get to like them? with the Belt and Road Initiative. Most, if they were going to make this happen, right? Well, the players that they could potentially still win over were Vietnam and Cambodia and Laos and the Philippines. And all of these people hate them so much more now than they did historically because of just stupid after stupid after stupid decision that China made. And they're all pushed closer to the United States. The only person that they may arguably have closer ties with now than historically is South Korea. But even in the case of South Korea, if China goes to military conflict, South Korea is not sitting that one out, right? Like they
neither is Japan. Yeah.
No, Japan is excited for this at this point. Japan wants to be. Japan isn't like Germany. Okay.
Well, they got to take that nice naval fleet for a little spin. You know, what have they been able to do aside from move their boats in threatening locations?
Germany got cucked by World War II, and now they enjoy cucking themselves. They would not. Japan has since World War II been dying for a chance to regain their military.
Well, and hasn't their newest prime minister, the new Margaret Thatcher of Japan, the successor to Shinzo Abe, isn't she investing more in what is it called?
More in the military,
public defense,
and their military is pretty good. Like their navy is pretty solid, and it's important. And not only that, but their technology is pretty solid as well. Keep in mind, you know, if you're going to an AI war or a drone war, having Japan and South Korea on your side is a pretty useful thing to have. Now,
in favor.
The reason I was saying she may still do it is, okay, so China is increasingly hostile. They are dealing with an economic collapse. It's all blamed on Xi. There isn't anyone else to point the blame at anymore because there's no one else to say is corrupt and kick it out of the government, right? And so now
the problem of getting rid of all the other leadership. Although I wanted to actually ask about this. Is it just the military leadership? I mean, there are many other facets of CCP governance. Surely those are not disrupted and everything else is normal.
Well, there's been arrests throughout those. The military is just the most extreme example.
Okay.
So if you it's saying here, so if you're in Xi's position here, right? Like you're trying to consolidate power.
Yes.
You say, okay, the economy's failing, everyone's blaming me, or I know the economy is about to start failing and everyone will start blaming me, right? So what do you do to avoid that? You attack Taiwan.
Oh no!
Because then you say, well, the economy's failing because of the blockades. The economy's failing.
Yeah, or we can't do elections right now. We have to shut down all political processes because we're in a state of emergency.
No one's even going to, like, the international community isn't even going to care if he starts assassinating top officials during a siege on Taiwan, right? Like they're only going to care about the Taiwan thing, right? Basically, it gives him carte blanche. Anyone who's been involved in a protest now, just execution time, right? Like it gives him the excuse for mass executions. It gives him the excuse for mass arrests. It gives him an explanation for why the economy is failing. It gives him a nationalist push with the citizen body. It is a smart thing to do at a him level. Now, it would cause a human rights catastrophe many times within central China. It would be the death knell of China in the same way Russia's attack on the Ukraine was the death knell of Russia, many times worse than the Holocaust. It would be holocausting his own people, essentially. I'm talking in terms of sheer numbers. But like, what do you do? And the other thing I note here is this is not necessarily good for us. Before I go further on this, one point I wanted to make about China, which some people often forget about China, is the CCP has been a fairly good enemy for the United States to have as our core political opponent. Before them, we were dealing with the Soviet Union. And that was constant, like, Cold Wars, like actual wars, like, you know, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, you know, just constantly this stuff, right? China doesn't get us involved in that nonsense, right? Before that, it was the Nazis, right? We had to actually fight them. That sucked. I don't want to do that nonsense again. And note here, I don't want to downplay how much, you know, the whole fentanyl thing sucks that they're flooding our country with, how much the TikTok thing sucks they're flooding our country with, but these things are infinitely better than like a Vietnam War or a World War II. Like, And I've pointed out now that I think that the next multipolar world is going to be the United States and Israel, because Europe is obviously collapsing as a power center and has their AI bans and their low fertility rates. So the only place where you see decent fertility rates other than the United States and good AI technology is Israel. And they show a lot of potential for dynamism. They can pretty much expand wherever they want within the region because there's nowhere around them boxing them in as soon as Europe is done cucking them. You know, what is it? Territory acquisition blocking them, cock blocking them. Because that's I mean, that's the they would just expand if they could. And so Israel is in a position where we're the next world weights is going to likely be the United States and Israel. Can we stay allies when we're the two top powers? I think it's unlikely. Like, we'll be able to be more friendly in the same way that, like, we've moved to a friendlier stance with every Nazis to communist to China to CCP. I think we'll move yet again friendlier with Israel, but that's going to be that's a whole other lecture to go into. But he has a reason to do it. Okay. Now, to continue here, and the military leaders who would have said no to this, they had a reason to say no. Like, we can't win. What do you mean? He may not care about winning, right? That may not be the point. So a few days later, on January 23rd, China's Ministry of National Defense publicly confirmed the arrest of Zhang Wudan and Louis Zelin for serious violations of discipline and law. A rare, harshly worded editorial from the PLA Daily directly claimed both men accused them of betraying Xi's trust, undermining CMC authority, shattering military unity, and damaging the political system and combat readiness. This was the fastest public condemnation ever for such a high-level PLA arrest.
Wow.
Now, note here that the condemnation was interesting because it was published as an editorial written by a newspaper that didn't publish it. Like, they sent it to another newspaper that then published it, but they didn't publish anything about this event. And then the newspaper that published it not redacted it, but it just disappeared from their web link. And I think it's back up now. But basically what we're seeing there is an internal power struggle right now. Like, some people are like, hey, we don't know that this is played out yet. These guys might end up getting out. Like, we don't want to end up on their bad side. Like, what happens with the coup? So what we're seeing is people in China are like, God, I don't know what to do next, right? Like,
Yeah.
Is there going to be an actual full-scale coup? My answer is probably not. Xi has taken out what he can because China is so hierarchical. You cut the head off a snake, you stop the snake. So this is bad for anyone who's hoping for a coup in China. The coup failed and triggered sweeping emergency measures across the PLA. The General Staff Department was effectively suspended. Operational control shifted to direct encrypted telegrams from the CMC, and the entire force was placed on level 1 combat readiness. Now, keep in mind, direct encrypted telegrams to the CMC. The CMC is now just Xi and the head of police, right? Like,
well, I'm sure their meetings are a lot more efficient now, so there's that.
Yeah, troop movements were frozen. Personal mobile phones were collected for inspection. So God knows if you got any email about any of this, any text about any of this, and mass political study sessions have been ordered. These steps treated the military itself as potentially an internal threat and significantly raised the risk of mutiny from the lower ranks. These are basically saying, all of you, we might be coming for you next. And not now. That's what every low-level person is debating. Everyone who's thinking of mutiny. Do I try to do something now before I'm taken? But do I even have the operational capacity to do something now? Right? Like, you need the whole military to be on board, and that's harder to do with the heads of the military under arrest.
Yeah. Yikes.
So for the other information you heard about during the November-December trip to Moscow, Zhang Wang reportedly survived an assassination attempt. And this is the one that the United States possibly warned him about and helped him out of. Shortly after returning from Russia, the PLA Air Force commander died under unclear circumstances. So this is the guy who was secretary, probably murdered. And an explosion in Beijing tunnel killed a man described as inner circles or rumors as being Xi's body double, along with several bodyguards. Now, note, when we talk about China and rumors, it's hard to get anything exact, but the same people who were saying these rumors were right about this attempted coup before any mainstream source claimed that this was an attempted coup, which makes me think that they were right on this stuff as well, basically documenting this inner war that's been happening in China. In terms of what's going on in China right now, power outages are hitting parts of Beijing. There are armored vehicles on the streets. Dissident sources warn people to avoid Chong Avenue because of possible remnant counter moves by loyalists. The arrests were overseen by Kai Kui, head of the Central Security Bureau, and Wang Ziyou's Ninth Bureau. And an open letter began circulating online, openly accusing Xi of tyranny, economic plunder, and isolating China, while calling on military officers and the public to revolt against him and the Politburo Standing Committee. So, broader impact on the PLA and its leadership right now. The Purge has left the Central Military Command gutted. Only Xi and Vice Chairman He Wendong remain as full CMC members. 4 theater-level full generals are left standing. Dozens of senior officers have been removed over the past year, including most of the previous Eastern Theater Command leadership responsible for the Taiwan contingencies. The Eastern Theater itself has been on an internal cleanup since September 2025, with the new acting commanders focused on rooting out influence from the sacked previous leaders rather than preparing for actual operations. So to note here, if you're like, where am I reading this from? Basically, everything that I found on this is way too wordy. Like Lay's Real Talk has about 4 videos on this event. I found them to be the best sources.
She's great. Yeah.
She is good, but she talks so slowly. And she goes way too much into detail about some things that I just don't care about. So I took transcripts of her videos and I put them into AI. And I summarized them and tried to organize them tighter for you guys so that we could get to just the juicy bits that explain the stuff where you're thinking like, wait, what? Like, what?
And we wish we could go through more primary sources, but we're not familiar with what Chinese language publications are and are not accurate and reputable. Beyond that, she has a lot of on-the-ground sources in China that report things to her directly. So she has just access to information that we don't. I wish we could do more primary research, but I've always really struggled with China in this way. It's very difficult as someone who is not a native language speaker, but also not on the ground in China, to actually know what's going on. And I know this too, just having, in my college years, traveled to China and different parts of China quite a lot, like some even rather rural, more remote areas where there just were 0 Western tourists. All the reading I did not give even anywhere close to an accurate representation of what these things were ultimately like. So,
well, what shocked you the most?
Just elements of life and culture and the way that people lived in different parts of China, how cities were different. I mean, a lot of it's stuff that's more, I guess you could say, tacit than explicit. Like, people wouldn't write about this stuff anyway. They wouldn't write about the foods or the way the foods are prepared or the random things you would find hiking on trails. Or
if you want to see this style of China that she is talking about, I would strongly suggest you check out the content of Winston and Lao Wai. They have now branded themselves as China Fact Chasers. Do not look at their more recent videos.
Go back to the way, like pre-2018 stuff.
So they used to live in China, and what they would do is they would put cameras on top of their motorcycles and they just drive around the countryside.
The motorcycle helmets. Yeah, I think they would both be mic'd and they would both be riding motorcycles together on the same road, but they would have GoPros on their helmets and just be riding around. It was so cool to watch because you just go on the roads in China.
And then they made 2 documentaries that are in this style that you can watch on Amazon.
Yeah.
And after leaving China, they have become a sort of anti-China critics. When they were in China, they couldn't say anything against China, right? And I find them to be entertaining, the most entertaining people who cover China. I've seen all of their videos, I think.
I have too. And what I loved so much about them was that was the closest I ever got after being in China myself to seeing what China was actually like. Because unless you're there, unless you're like in the real actual restaurants, you're basically seeing the media equivalent of what Western tourists to North Korea see, right? You're like, you have a minder, you're only staying in very specific places, you have blinders on essentially. And you don't
and what they show you is, as a non-Chinese person, there's some towns where you can't even get a hotel, right? Like it is that hard if you don't have your government license. So you're just not going to see this in a way. This is very hard to see this through anyone else's eyes. I think they've done the best job of any 2 humans of documenting Chinese culture. Yeah. And what I wish they had done, if instead of moving to be anti-China YouTubers, I think, just if anyone who knows them is watching this, I think they should move to doing what they used to do, but in other countries. I would love to see them do that in Peru, across the United States. I'd love to see somebody do that.
Yeah. Just like actually stay in hotels, actually. Yeah. My best experiences in terms of really getting what it's like to be in China, were leave major cities, leave hotels, and just take buses everywhere. I wouldn't say it was pleasant, but even if you're not allowed to stay in certain towns or stay in certain hotels, you're going to see what it's really like when you take public transport everywhere, especially if it's in rural areas.
Yeah.
And I mean, they had their motorcycles. I mean, that was a sort of
You
level
can't
of
do that
additional
anymore,
isolation.
by the way, Simone. They now have government IDs to track you.
Mm.
So they were sort of the last generation where you could even get away with what they did. No, but the point I'm making here is Lay's Real Talk is the best channel if you want sort of underground gossip and you're okay with listening for a really long time, because she's better than them at that, because she has more inside CCP insurrectionist group contacts than they have. But anyway, to continue here. And I'll note here, the people who seem to understand China the least are the ones who work the most with China, is what I found. Basically, anyone who's ever done business with China has no idea how China operates. And I think it's because you're sort of forced to put on blinders if you're doing business with China, or you can lose business contacts or ability to do business in China. And people are underestimating how much that is corrupting their vision of how bad things are actually for China.
Well, and you're being told the sales pitch. If you're doing business in China, it's because there are Chinese businesses trying to get you to invest in them or some way, or buy from them in some way. So of course you're going to be given this.
Well, and then you
skewed
have
perception.
to turn around and do that sale pitch to other people. And this is something
100%.
that
Yeah.
Elon's
Because I mean,
always
that is actually how I first discovered China. My dad worked in a medical field selling medical devices, and then would go to China for trade shows and would use his airline points to let me, as a young teen, sometimes fly with him on business trips and then just like crash in his hotel and do whatever it is I did during the day, wander the streets while he did business meetings. But sometimes I'd go to the business meetings at night, and oh my God, I hate Chinese business meetings. They're the worst because you have to drink. So, I mean, they didn't make me drink. But what I'm saying is my experience in those business meetings was so different from my experience walking the streets as a teen girl, just randomly, like by myself. And yeah, 100%. There is it, yeah. And I totally agree with you. People who are doing business in China don't listen to what they say. It's not that what they're saying isn't 100% true. They're not lying to you. They're just not being given a
well, no,
complete
they're being
picture.
forced to buy into the propaganda to an extent, and they don't realize that when they then turn around and tell somebody else, oh, you know, I'm working with this person in China, they're part selling the narrative of Chinese internal stability. When, you know, when I look at my friends in China, like Stanford MBAs and stuff like that, like they've gone like completely hikikomori, like off the grid, not doing anything. Like that's the state of like actual educated China right now. Is not working, haven't left their house since COVID, sort of stuff. Not everyone, but this is like actually still a thing, right? Like, and I think that people don't realize how much China never woke up from COVID. And it sort of entered a different state when that happened. But to continue here, who's this guy who survived, right? I saw all this and I was like, I want to know more about this guy, right?
Yeah.
So Zhang Xingmin is still in place as a central military commissioner, at the CMC, because he is widely regarded as one of Xi's most reliable, loyal, and incorruptible figures within the military leadership. His survival is not accidental, it's tied directly to his role and track record. So he has long headed the CMC Discipline Inspections Commission, the military's internal watchdog, making him the chief enforcer of these anti-corruption campaigns within the PLA. October 2025, during the fourth plenum, He Wundong, then a CMC vice chairman, was purged and expelled. Zhang Zemin was immediately promoted to replace him as the second-race vice chairman of the CMC, elevating him from a regular member to one of the uniformed positions. So he didn't move into a position within this organization that everyone else has been kicked out of until October 2025. Like, again, very new blood here. Multiple reports describe him as incorruptible, a strong supporter of Xi's systemic purge policy, and who enjoys direct presidential favors. He embodies the loyalty and discipline model Xi wants at the top. Analysts note that his job literally involves rooting out disloyalty and corruption. So he's the one holding the knife in these purges, not the target. As long as he keeps basically feeding Xi people's heads, he keeps his job and he's going to stay around. So it's not like he's quaking in his boots because everyone else has been kicked out here. In regards to the competence of what's left, the leaders were often battle-tested or technically skilled, e.g. rocket force exports or operational commanders, leaving gaps filled by political appointees because of loyalty over expertise. This has eroded military effectiveness, which already we had a lot of reason to question, with analysts noting potential delays in readiness of 6 to 12 months for Eastern theater recovery and broader party inefficiencies. So, yeah. That's where we are in China right now. It is a it's a fascinating time to be alive. It's an interesting thing. If people say, is this a good thing or a bad thing for America? China was going to die either way. This moves their death closer and sooner. And if that's a good thing to you, then this is a good thing.
Or, well, I mean, is this more just what one would expect given the inevitable incentives, well, the obvious writing on the wall incentives and headwinds / tailwinds that China is facing? Isn't this more just exactly what we would, I mean, we can never say, well, I think this exact thing is going to happen, but
I mean, I was a
shakeups like this.
It was a coin flip whether this succeeded. Okay.
Yeah.
It is no longer a coin flip what happens next. If this had succeeded, it could have been very good for China and potentially the world, especially if America had helped organize this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now we're in a situation where it only gets worse for China. And note here, if we talk about a military invasion of Taiwan, this also could be a good thing for human civilization. One, if it gives us time to adjust to AI's logarithmically increasing capabilities these days, because it will delay technology so much. So that would be really, really positive. The second thing is if Taiwan, and Taiwan is going to scuttle their factories if they're invaded, right? Like China is not going to get the capacity to produce these semiconductors simply because they take Taiwan, right? If that happens,
just going to go full scorched earth.
From what I've heard, the factories are already rigged to detonate.
My lord, that's terrifying.
I mean, why wouldn't you? It's your core economic asset. You need to have leverage over it. You need to have something you can negotiate with. And so if these factories go boom, even if China takes them, they probably won't be able to operate them because nobody's going to give them the parts. And to make semiconductors, you need a giant international supply chain, right? So if China takes it, where is global semiconductor manufacturing going to center? The answer, I think, is pretty obvious to people who are not stupid, is the United States is going. It will take us time, but we will likely become the next head of this. And that only gives us more power. So whatever. I don't like that they're doing it, but should we intervene? Taiwan has a birth rate under 1. Potentially the lowest in the regions. I've seen numbers as low as 0.7. Why would you do anything to save a country that's not going to exist in a couple of generations? Like, why would you risk your blood to save a country that's not going to exist? Now, would we do some blockades? Of course. I think that makes a lot of sense. Just to, make sure that China doesn't go crazy with this, especially if you make this too easy on them. But does it make sense to intervene to save them? No, I think it makes sense to do the blockade. And that's where you get the big human rights crisis, right? With all the starvation and, a multi-cost, I guess I'd call it. So.
Yikes.
I gotta put that scene from the hilarious and YouTube skit where a guy gets taken to the multiverse and he realizes he's the only one from a universe where Hitler didn't win. And they're like,
what we're trying to do right now is save not just your world, but every world in the multiverse, all right? Trillions upon trillions of lives, all right? Like 3 Holocausts. How big were your Holocaust?
As a side note here, if you try to look this up, because I decided to ask an AI, has anything new come out? And it's like, well, a lot of what you're talking about is what's going through the rumor mill in China watcher circles, but no major news outlet in China has reported it as confirmed yet. And it's like, China's not going to report this as confirmed. How do you think this works? You think the CCP is like, yeah, we had an attempted coup. Like, the top generals tried to arrest Xi Jinping. No, that's not the way any of this works. And if that's what you need to report on a story, you're not going to get that story to the public. right? Everyone else on the War Council was arrested and then immediately admitted to be arrested by China Public News, which has never happened during one of these purges before. Something super unique is going on, and no one is talking about it. Anyway.
Oh God.
But the point here being, this is an inflection point for humanity, and people online are focused on some streamer who was caught with CP and some, why? What are you people doing? This is like literally one of the most important things in human civilization right now.
I just think it goes to show that no one really cares. Same with demographical apps. People just don't really care. They've already priced it in. And you can see it in the rampant nihilism that both exists in China and the United States and other countries too. People don't think money matters anymore. They're never going to get a house. They know they're not going to get any social benefits in old age. Gerontocracies run everything and are just voting themselves more benefits. Recently on X, there was a lot of discussion about this $6,000 tax credit that is going to be sent to boomers and retired people as part of the, I think, working families tax cut, because that makes sense. And everyone on X is like, great. Okay, so my child tax credit is capped out at $2,500, but retired people who neither have children at home nor are working are getting $6,000. Explain this to me. So anyway,
it
doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me. The world is burning. Everyone understands it. Of course, China's falling apart. Of course, we have no future. At least we can just gossip about so-and-so who's pervy. At least we can talk about the fight. What did Asmongold call it in Minnesota? GTA, Return of Karens.
GTA, the Return of Karens. Oh my God. So there was this cool game.
Yeah.
Postal 2 back in the day. And people would be protesting stupid stuff and stuff like that. And you could go out and and do GTA things to the protesters if you felt like it. I think it'd be really fun for some based person to make a GTA style open world game that takes place right now
in Minnesota with ice What I see though, and I mean, what you also see with these ice protests is that there's just a lot of people out there who have so much pent up rage and displaced aggression that they're just taking it out on ICE officers, that they just want to go out with their little whistles, their super annoying whistles and their screams, and they just want to yell at someone who's in a position of authority, because on all sides of the political spectrum, people are super fed up with positions and authority. So if you're on the left and if you are against what ICE is doing, an easy way to express that displaced aggression, and which has been shown in research to actually be very effective. Expressing displaced aggression, like if you're a mouse that's being stressed out, taking it out on another mouse, that reduces your cortisol levels more than a mouse that is.
I was not working on our chatbot platform right now, our fab.ai. Literally, I would make this game. And you know what? I would try to make it so based that there be at least 3 factions. And so you can join the anti-ICE side, or you can join the pro-ICE side, or you can join, we probably just have a pro meme burn everything down side.
Oh yeah. Just run down everyone.
No, literally to make everyone infinitely mad at us, to make the most offensive game in history would be the goal of this. And I bet that game would sell so bad.
What? No. Why? When apparently people feel like they have license to do the real thing. It's as though, imagine, you're some esoteric rich sociopath that wishes they could hunt humans for sport, but then they discovered that they could with free license. That is basically, I think, how many people actually feel about these ICE protests. Like, oh, wait, I'm allowed to just beat up law enforcement officers with impunity. I mean, they're discovering now that, oh, actually, I might end up getting shot because they're going to, respond. But I think that's a lot of what's going on, is they just feel like, well, I'm a US citizen. They're not allowed to do anything to me. So I'm going to do all this. I'm going to create a database of all their license plates, and I'm going to go around and track them and terrorize them.
Like
And
ripping up their cars and stuff and
Uh-huh.
taking and running away
they
with the gun.
feel like they can do so with impunity. And to a great extent, a lot of the things that they've done have not been met with.
Frankly, I think there needs to be more lethal force. I think Trump needs to change the laws so that disrupting this stuff can just be met with lethal force. Because when you see stuff like people ripping apart ICE vans, stopping and harassing random people in the streets because they're driving vans that could plausibly be ICE vans, it's just horrifying what we're seeing now, right? Like they're basically turning on any random person they think they can. We are seeing the true horror of this faction, and it's wild that it's happening where we're seeing all of this fraud, where we actually know that these are actively malevolent groups who are stealing money from the poor people. Like that is literally what these illegal immigrants are doing in these areas. They are not just like people, scared little people looking for a place to stay. They're like actively running multi-billion-dollar scams that we have documented at this point that are directly stealing from poor people and mothers, right? Like why is shutting this down controversial? But we know why it's controversial. That's what we talk about on this channel. So, that's where we are.
Yeah. Crazy times, but we're very curious to see what happens with China.
Very curious. Do you have any prediction what happens next? I think Xi consolidates his power. I think it was in a year, he might even begin to be making more aggressive moves about attacking somebody. Does he necessarily go after Taiwan? No, he might go after some parts of Russian territory if he thinks Russia is cheap enough and it would be an easy enough victory. But the problem is that if they can make friendly enough with Russia, then they can run oil veins through Russia and not have to worry as much about the blockades. So the question is really just like, what calculation does he do? Are we going to see more crackdowns? Yes. Is China going to get more brutalistic? Yes. Is their economy going to continue to collapse? Yes. Are they going to continue to pretend to be making advancements in the sciences that they're not actually making? Yes. That's sort of where we are with China. Very bleak. And if I lived in China right now, I'd be getting out. I just don't see how there's any future left. And
a lot of people already have gotten out. A lot of people have been doing everything they can. It has just been difficult for. I think that the challenge is if you are a person who actually can get out, meaning you're a person of means and wealth, it is very difficult to get your wealth out of the country, which is why many people, for example, are using IVF clinics and surrogacy to have babies in the United States that are US citizens who can have, they can slowly transfer their wealth to them. I remember I watched at one point this fascinating YouTube video on essentially the money laundering process, whereby
this is where anchor babies are actually good for the US. So we then siphon money from China. Now, obviously this hurts things like real estate prices. Don't get me wrong. I know that, right? But it's hurting real estate prices because real estate is
more than boomers.
Well, no, it's helping boomers, right? When we hurt real estate prices, we typically help the boomers who own the real estate, who are predominantly Americans. The bidding up of the price of real estate predominantly helps Americans, just not the Americans we want to help, which are the boomers. We need to send them to MAID, right? But what I'm putting on is broadly, it makes America stronger to have more money, to take rich people from other countries, even if it is very annoying if you live in a city. But then why are you living in a city, you knob?
Anyway, I love you.
Love you too.
Life is good.
Every show that I watch regularly, I don't think that there are any which do as much interspersion of evergreen deep dives into things content and news related content, or even also including like meme war type stuff, culture war type stuff.
I am.
Like Rev says Desu is like only memes. Asmongold is like only news.
He does game coverage too. He does game stuff.
Yeah, he does game stuff too. Leaflet
and streamer gossip. He does gossip, but like for a very specific.
Yeah, he does do gossip. Yeah,
I love gossip.
That's not really like that more evergreen stuff, like wider theories and things like that. Probably Ed Dutton. I was just watching one of his streams. He was doing one with Aiden, who got back to me about being on our stream, but We never organized a date, and then they stopped following up. So we gotta get that.
Who?
Aiden Palin or something. She has a good channel. And then there's a new one I reached out to recently, Kirsha. I mean, we've done stuff
You
on her.
reached out to her?
I reached out to her again. I was just like, hey, really should go on. We went viral again recently, so maybe. And now our channel's, getting closer to being the size of hers. So
yeah,
in terms of like average stream numbers. So it'd be weird for her to say no, but people
guest appearances on our show haven't performed well, and so we just don't really do them anymore.
Well, some have if the person's particularly famous.
Yeah, I mean, I think our best performing episode ever is Hellmath, isn't it? When he came on,
ones that have done really well have been Leaflet, Curtis Yarvin, Hellmath. Right. Like they have to be famous in our community. You can't just take like a random person, which I think a lot of people like don't get. They're like, oh, you can't just put on anyone? No, unfortunately,
not so.
That will really damage us in the metrics. What was I going to say? How did the episode? What were the comments about it?
Overwhelmingly, people just had to chime in to say, sure, there's demographic collapse in India because they're all in Canada now, or just insert wherever they are. And they were just super mad about India sending all it is the largest source. It's in terms of countries in the world that are producing the most immigrants, that is to say people leaving the country, India does take the cake. That is absolutely true. And so I think that can hide or obscure the fact that India that doesn't somehow protect it from demographic collapse. In fact, it of course makes it worse if your people are leaving the country in droves, on top of the fact that urbanization within the country is driving lower fertility. So India's extra screwed, but people don't really think about it because they feel like they're being surrounded by Indian immigrants.
Now, you tell me if I should drink this, okay? I just opened this and it was really pressurized and a lot of air came out of it, and that's not normal for this, which means something was growing in it, right?
Yeah.
And now it tastes carbonated, but not bad.
So have you produced is it fermented now?
Well, hold on, actually, I'll taste. Does it have like a... Yeah, it's got like a little vinegary taste.
You're the sensitive one.
My horrible wife ate spoiled. So we were watching Apothecary's Diaries, and she's always like trying to poison herself, and they have to keep poison away from her because she's like addicted to the stuff and finds it very fun to learn about new types of poisons. And my wife ended up getting very, very sick. She admitted this to me because she knew I'd be mad at her. Got very sick from eating expired nuts, almond paste. And so I was like, okay, well, at least we have notified that it's the almond paste and you're not going to do that again. So she admits to me today, she's like, I finished that almond butter. I knew it was making me sick, but I just couldn't help it.
Expired food is the most delicious food because you don't have to feel guilty dwindling the household supplies. Because no one else can eat it. It's too much of a liability. I am of Okie stock. When the Dust Bowl hit Oklahoma, all the farming families fled, except for my ancestors who were like, this is nice. I'm going to stay here. I like eating sand and rotten, spoiled food. Let's do this. Buckle in. And they were still there post World War II. Having a blast.
Well, maybe it was the right choice if you've read, books from the period.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, we're so against the concept of migrants that we would never be migrants.
Right.
That's too disagreeable.
But the Indian one, people were like, hey, you guys, like the H-1B thing is like a problem. And we're like, we said the H-1B thing was a problem. We were super clear on that. Like, I don't know. We said literally that you should just have requirements of not hiring above a certain percentage of Indians. Like, I don't know how you could get more extreme on that issue. Like, how extreme do they want us to be?
I don't know, man. But I understand now from many anecdotes that people have shared with us in comments and direct messages that a lot of people have been very personally touched by this. And it's extremely frustrating. It's one thing to see something abstractly in the news and to get involved in the Oh, we're going in for more. Okay.
This
The
is a
polarized.
terrible mistake, isn't it?
I can see the bubbles in it.
Well, the bubbles got up to like here when I first opened it.
Oh. But you just discovered that you like fermented pomegranate juice, so you could ask AI, not that it's going to give you an ironclad response. I just heard of some influencer talking about how ChatGPT insisted to her friend that hemlock was just carrot sprouts. It's like, it's fine. It's not hemlock.
With just carrot sprouts. That's hilarious.
Don't worry about it.
AI's trying to kill us one person at a time.
Yeah, I mean, were they wrong or were they right? Was this a mistake? I don't know. I don't know. You tell me. Oh.
All right.
Sorry.
So you're going out in a blizzard to change the chicken's water?
To give them hot water, because their water is frozen. The cold seems to have messed with the heater for the water, so warm growler water bowls. We'll just change out the bowls.
Hmm.
Right.